Hey guys, welcome back to Enlightened Turtle. It's your host Kev here. So I did a video in the last couple of weeks regarding Mauritania and the Eye of the Sahara. Now, I did find some anomalous stuff on the last video. We found what appeared to be a potential Iron Age hill fort up in this region of Mauritania. There was this town known as Chega, though there was very little information on the area, and we managed to find some kind of potential Iron Age hill fort along with Neolithic rock art, which was quite interesting. And we found a few other anomalous things when we were looking around. But today we're going to look at more because I've been looking and I have found. So let's get straight into it. So the first location we're going to come across is called Modesia. I don't know how to pronounce that, so if anyone speaks Arabic, put it in the comment section. Don't know how you're going to pronounce something in the comment section, but you know, we need to start getting some comments around here. Now, as I was looking around here, the reason I was looking across these mountains is because of Herodotus. He spoke of the fact that in Egypt you had the Great Pyramids, and over across the Libyan Sea there was similar pyramids to in Giza, except they were known as Black Pyramids. Now, he claimed they were in a mountain range to the west beyond the Libyan Sea. So I had a little look at the whole area, and to be honest, it's quite hard to find anything really, because you've got to zoom right in, otherwise things don't really stand out too well. But I was having a little look around and I noticed a lot of black rocks, so I zoomed in, had a little look. But to be honest, I couldn't really find anything. But you do see these like classic watermarks and ripples, as you can see here just outside Modesia. And I seen this drop off here, so I was like, let's go in for a closer look. Now let me just make sure the brightness is fully up. Yeah. So as you can see here, you've got Modesia, and I seen this hill here. I thought, seen that little circle there, and I thought, well, maybe that's something. But come to that in just a second. I started to see, you know, like all this on the map. Not too sure what it is. Just looks like maybe some irrigation or something like that. You see some slightly old things here, like circles in the ground, which we seem to see a lot of. But I don't know if you noticed it on the side of the screen then, but like I say, I noticed the elevation area. So I was like, well, what's in the area? Did anyone see anything? Well, let's zoom in. Like I say, it was this knobbly thing I was interested in at first, but you can't see nothing on there. You go to 3D, it just still looks flat. But I noticed this ring of structures here. Now, as you can see, there's a pretty large building down there in the top of the screen. So this is obviously quite large. So I was looking at this thinking, what is it? Maybe it was some kind of fort or large group of buildings, maybe like a castle or something like that, and you've got like a central courtyard here. But I was like, I can't really tell what it is, so I kept moving along, and then as I noticed a more flatter area over here, you start to see you see things like this in the centre of the screen. Now, when you have foundational work, and you have buildings, when the foundations get ripped out or overlaid, you know, you've got organic material, carbon material, so you get things like foliage and shrubbery will grow along these places, and tends to show you where the land had been disrupted in the past. And you can see it's like a little bit of a square there with a line, but there's not really too much to tell. And then you see more straight lines and angles, and you're thinking, okay. But then you come over here and you see what looks like very distinct squares. So perhaps these were buildings or something in antiquity, and yeah, there's just no story to go with it. But like I say, there's quite a few places I want to get to, so moving on. So as I said, we're having a nice little whip around here. So this is an area called Kazar El Barka. So let's go in for a closer look. So there's this area here, obviously it's alright dog. We have some discoloration here on it's classic Google Maps, isn't it? You know, you can either see some kind of shapes here, but you know, we don't know what that is. So I'm roaming around, I noticed this big large river, well, dried up river. These are all dried riverbeds, and I started to notice a couple of things. So I'm like, oh, what's this here? Like, that looks like some kind of old fort building, something like that. And as you can see, the water bends round there, and this is the larger river here. But then as you come across, it's like, OMG, OMG, what is that over there? Like, I'm not too sure what this is. Over here to the side, it's just like a smaller place. And this is on maximum zoom, by the way, so I can't get any closer. We can go on to 3D, but it doesn't really make a difference, does it? And as you can see here, this is a very large settlement that's basically being swallowed by the desert. Now we have the area to the northeast where the water, as we discussed in previous videos, would have came sweeping from the northeast down to the southwest. So it's all in accordance with that. But yeah, I mean, look at the size of this place. Let's see, can we find any local buildings for reference? As you can see more boundaries around over here and up there. Not too sure, perhaps these are just farmsteads, you know, keep cattle inside and things like that. However, this is not to be scuffed at. This is a very large settlement here. We have, like I say, sand, mud. It's basically covered all the northern section, the northeastern section of the settlement, and the southwestern portion of the settlement seems to have, well, it's barely visible, is it? So here we go. Like I say, we're whipping around. We're looking for places that could potentially be like antiquity, deep antiquity, potentially Atlantean remnants. Because as we spoke of with Herodotus, you know, the Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania, although it is a city, although it is large enough, and the area within the Eye of the Sahara is large enough to be a small country in essence, the philosophers spoke of such a large area and a large continent. Now, I am aware of like things in the past, if going back only a few hundred years, you know, people would mistake the letter I for a number 1, and that letter I was sometimes used as a letter J, depending on the period and the language. But the J or the I would stand for either Jesus or Jesus, i.e. Jesus. So it would be like the time of Jesus, as we still use today, you know, with the Anno Domini and BC, before Christ. So there's a lot of discrepancies in the timelines, especially when you start to research the work of Anatoly Fomenko, who has got massive reservations with the Scalinger chronology of our past, like the dates, information of multiple sources not correlating, you know, having divergence. But yeah, we have an overall structural theme seems to be going through almost every culture around the world, which is riveting really. But there's a video to come on Anatoly Fomenko, so stay tuned for that. But let's get back to the video. Like I say, massive settlement here, not much information. Let's type in Khazar el-Barka to Google. So this is the extent of the information available on Wikipedia, which to be honest doesn't fill me with confidence that this is very accurate. Khazar el-Barka, which is Arabic, are ruins in Mauritania, as we've seen. It was established in 1690 by the Kutna, who were from the Odain. So let's just see who the Odain are. Udain or Wadden is a small town in the desert region of central Mauritania. Okay. Situated on the southern edge of the Adra Plateau, 93 kilometers north of Chinguetti, the town was a staging post for the trans-Saharan trade for caravans transporting slabs of salt from the mines of Ijil. The town, a World Heritage Site in ruins, is still substantially intact, while a small modern settlement lies outside its gates. Quadine is the closest town to the Ricard structure, a massive circular landmark visible from space. So let's go and check Quadine on the map. So just before we checked Quadine, I thought I'd have a quick look at some of these images of Khazar el-Barka. So there's no mortar used. It's all just stone stacked on top of stone. Now, can I say as well, you know, I've mentioned in the previous video about the Neolithic stonework and Neolithic artwork and the Iron Age hill fort. Now, when you go back to those periods of time in Great Britain, we see walls like this everywhere. You know, you go to Wales, Scotland, Yorkshire, anywhere that's rural that hasn't been absolutely destroyed, you see these structures everywhere. I can see some kind of plasters maybe being used on the inside here. It's quite a large settlement. Now the 1600s, that's an interesting time frame really, 1600s. Because as I mentioned with Anatoly Fomenko, one of his biggest problems and one of the things he references, anything before the 1600s is very, very skeptical in terms of accuracy of dating. Now, he made reference to, like I've mentioned, Plato, for talking about Mauritania and the Sahara. Plato's obviously a well-renowned philosopher, descendant of Solon. Now, there's another medieval version of Plato who happened to be in the very same mould, talked about the same philosophical point of view, even called his school the same name, and even had his name similar to Plato. It was like Platorum or something like that. But he established a medieval school, and he's not the only person to have a medieval counterpart, if you will. There's also a person called Dionysius, who was a scientist in, I believe it was Eastern Italy, around the medieval period, potentially just a little bit later. And the interesting thing with these people is they are credited with rejuvenating the ancient schools of similar names, similar philosophies, ideologies, etc. But what Anatoly Fomenko dives deep into is the fact that the dates are so, when they reference certain points of interest in the medieval time, say for example, there's correlations to the more deep antiquity versions of events, and we don't actually have the original copies from deep antiquity. We only have the medieval replicas allegedly taken from originals. So the whole timeline is very, very nefarious, to say the least. And to say that this was built in the 1600s, is it plausible? Absolutely, 100% it's plausible. Could it have been built before the 1600s? Absolutely, it's 100% plausible. For all we know is, as we've seen on Wikipedia, which was very limited information there, you know, it says it was founded or established or something in the 16th century. Yeah, for all we know is this could have been a repopulation in the 16th century. This could have been a bit of maintenance on an already existing structure to allow people to start settling within the compound itself. So just bear that in mind when referencing dates and things like that. As I say, scaling your chronology is literally all over the place. I'm up to chapter 2, listening to Anatoly Fomenko, and to be honest, I'll actually put a link to a playlist of a guy who's been breaking this all down, which is, he's doing great work, to be honest, as long as you don't mind a little bit of commentary that goes along with the actual audio book, which is fine. You can either skip that or listen to it as I do for another opinion. But yeah, so we've had a little look here. As we say, there's not much here, is there really, to be honest. So as I've said, we've had a little look around at some of these pictures. We can't really tell too much. It is what it is. It's a structure. There's not much information on the internet to go along with the images. So I'm just going to click back on here. So as you can see, there's Mauritania, Eye of the Sahara, just for reference. So we're going to zoom in. This is that city we've just seen on Wikipedia, which was allegedly the closest settlement to the Eye of the Sahara. And already we're seeing, it's quite a built up area, isn't it? We've seen a lot of landmarks. Putis, 40 feet. See this? So this might be similar to that fort that we've seen up near Chega. Let's have a little look. Hopefully you got some more images here. Oh, there's a well. I wonder where that leads. Great, so we only got 3 photographs on there. Fantastic. Zoom in and see what we can see. Again, just the imagery is so poor, the resolution. You can't really tell what that is, to be fair. Any more landmarks in this town? Quite a few mosques. Oh yeah, there's a museum. It's a government office and it's got no visuals, okay. Something tells me I won't get street view down here. Let's go in. No. So like I say, we've had a little look around. Let's go in for a little close up on that area there. Stuff like this is what always sticks out to me, you know. I don't know what is going on there. There's been a lot of vehicles moving around. And as I've said in the previous video, you know, if all this area was the runoff from the major floods that took place, then there should be boulders everywhere. There should be lintels, bricks, columns, you name it. If all this was the makeup of the city of Atlantis, the Eye of the Sahara, as well as surrounding areas, you know, there should be stonework around, I should imagine, but I've not seen any data come up of any crazy artwork, crazy stone masonry, anything discovered all in this area. If I lived there, to be honest, I probably would go out and try and find something. Not to say people haven't done that, to be fair. So yeah, so we were looking at this area, weren't we? Again, you know, I'm just whipping around here, and here is obviously the Ricard structure. Now, one of the things I just wanted to mention very briefly, because I meant to touch on it in a previous video, was the coloration of the stone mentioned in Atlantis was I believe, if I'm not mistaken, red, black and white, if I'm not mistaken, which is why there's been reference to, nations that have that colour on the flag and things like that by other researchers, but I won't go there. But what is fascinating and quite revealing here is there is this mixture of colour in the stone, well, should I say, in the rings of the islands, which, for all intents and purposes, could essentially be, the minerals of the stone that got ripped apart, destroyed, and sank into the mud in the ground, and became part of the Rickard structure itself. As you can see, the water would have came from the north, as we've discussed, and flowed this way. Again, as you can see up here, the runoff there is quite clearly visible as well. And just to refresh people's memories, this could potentially be the straits that were broken, even though there's no proof of that. There's no excavation where it took place. There's no. If this was the area that the Atlanteans, well, at least the Atlas kingdom of the Atlanteans, the founding city that Poseidon founded, and Atlas obviously was the first king, hence Atlas Mountains and etc. etc. But if they did control this strait here, there'd have to be some kind of infrastructure there. Obviously, again, everything's been torn up, so would you find anything anyway? Possibly not. But this area is, say, supposed to have been an area that controlled who came in and out, who went over to like Egypt and Libya or wherever. And I'd like to see more high resolution imagery of this area, if I'm being completely honest. But that is allegedly the Straits of Hercules that may have controlled who came in and who came out of the city of Atlantis. So here we have a lovely shot. As you can see, all the sand is swaying down from northeast to southwest, and you have the salt has been laid on the ground with the sediment, and we can see it. It's clear as day. And there's an interesting strip that's been placed in there. So is it possible that there could be something hiding in that strip? Who knows? We'll have a look now. Excuse me. But as we move in for a closer look, we begin to see there's an actual area designated as unknown structures to the north of Mauritania. So again, when I started this little, well, I guess this is a two-part series, who knows, maybe it'll turn into a three-part series. When I started this little look around this area, I was hoping to find structures, but some of the things I've seen, like, there really is no explanation for, to be totally honest. And we look at this construction site here, this earthworks. I mean, these are pretty big structures. They're not massively big. As you can see, there's some trees and shrubbery around to compare it with. But we have unknown structures. 2 reviews. Anyone left any comments? I'm by no means an architect, but the foundations of the building to the northwest look like the perimeter of a European castle. Chronology, medieval, stick with it. Fit with what would be turret and possibly a central spire or keep. Someone else has put, don't know if you'll be able to see this, but someone's put an ancient Pokemon stadium. Banter. We love a bit of banter. So the area to the northwest, he said, which will be this building here. Now, if you go and look at the fortification that we found in Chega in the previous video, there's no story to it. There's no history behind it. They claim it's just on a trade route, as we just heard from the previous settlement that we've just looked at. What was it? Khazar El Barka. there's not much information on these places, not much information at all, and it seems like who's going out there, who's excavating, who's trying to find out all the information on these settlements and areas. They've quite literally called this unknown. Would that not be motivation for, again, an archaeologist to go out there and make a name for himself? You've got to zoom in quite close because the pixelation's not great, and some of these structures are not super massive, so they don't stand out unless you're zoomed in pretty much all the way. So yeah, if anyone else is going to have a go at doing this, please do so, and please send me a copy, or give me a shout out so I can come and have a little look at it myself and see what you found. But let's keep moving along here. So briefly, one of the things I wanted to mention also was I've just seen people are more and more discussing the sea peoples who there's only one mention of the sea peoples as far as I'm aware, and that is in Egypt from a pharaoh. Forgive me, I can't remember the pharaoh's name, but there's a temple where there's a relief on the wall in hieroglyphs depicting the sea peoples. Um, Apparently they came in two waves, and yeah, in the second wave I believe the pharaoh managed to capture these sea peoples and settle them within his lands, along with some other some other crazy stuff that happened. But one of the things I wanted to touch on here is that I mentioned again in that previous Atlantis video about, you know, the Cheggers around the Canary Isles. You had like the Berbers in North Africa. So let's just hold on to that for a second. So if all this area in the centre, Algeria, Libya, Nigeria, Mali, Chad, Sudan, large parts of this desert area were once ocean and water, then of course the sea peoples would have navigated around this sea, this ocean, this bouncing between mountain ranges, islands, and some of these potential areas that we've discovered in essence. But the thing that gets me the most is that yes, the sea peoples um, allegedly attacked the likes of Malta, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, and all this is Egypt. All this area got allegedly assaulted by the sea peoples who came, raided, destroyed everywhere, pillaged everywhere, and basically all the areas went dead for like 100 years. There's hardly any writing uh, or anything, you know. Basically, it's just an anomalous act that happened and caused massive destruction to all these established cultures in and around the Mediterranean. So let's just say the chronology is wrong and say Atlantis happened. I can only imagine it sort of took place really 3-4 thousand years ago. I mean, like I know Solon mentions meltwater pulse 1b going back to well 9,000 years before Solon, so 11,000 years, and there was pulse A and pulse B allegedly, but yeah, the amount of established societies that got attacked and raided, you know, the people must have been very advanced or very desperate and in very large numbers to do what they did. So perhaps they were escaping some kind of cataclysm that happened in and around this area, and that's why they all spread up north, because you had the protection of the Atlas Mountains to the north of Mauritania, and if everything's draining from the northeast to the southwest, then people are obviously going to try and go around that area and into the drier areas of the northwest. And obviously, if the seafaring peoples travelling all across this once Libyan Sea, then crossing the Mediterranean and stuff like that, you know, they would have been well capable of doing that. The bloodline, like as I've showed in previous videos, you have the migration patterns from the Black Sea, the Caucasus areas, Armenia, Georgia, just north of there, just south of there. All this area is where the migration took place that basically populated all these lands. You know, if you listen to evolutionists, they'll tell you, oh, there was some kind of subspecies of human living here and living there, and then they crossbreeded, and then total hocus pocus. I couldn't buy into that if you paid me to buy into that. But like I say, you've got all this, and then you've got the Guanche tribe and the Berbers. Now, I point to these two specifically because, as you can see here, they're so close in proximity, and they're so close to Mauritania itself. So if all this area was flooded, you know, where are you going to run to? If I'm in Mauritania, if I'm in the Eye of the Sahara, and all water's coming this way and we're getting told, look, get out of here as quick as you can, I'm going directly north, mate. Because as we've seen in the giant fish, this is obviously an elevated area. So this would have been the place where they went straight away. Boom, get over there, try and get into the mountains and try and get protected from the oncoming floods. And it just so happens that all these areas have the same genetic blueprint. So perhaps the blood group that we think originated from over this area, perhaps originated from over this area, fleed up north across the western area of Africa, Europe into Great Britain, and perhaps even became as far around or into like founded like the Netherlands, Denmark, things like that. I think it was the lost tribes of Israel, if you will, coming out of this area. But again, chronology, timelines, locations, it could all be. I don't want to flip the whole of our history on its head, but there's so many discrepancies. A lot of people do not believe this is the Holy Land, believe it or not. There's volumes of research to say that this is not the area because the geography does not match the literature or the scripture. You know, people try and overlay it and they can't make it fit. No matter what you do, they just can't make it fit. There's places, locations and all that you think, oh, potentially. I mean, just then quickly, I know I'm going to go slightly off topic here, but it's all relevant. In terms of chronology and things like that, Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, you know, there's also another city not too far from Pompeii, it's called like Herculaneum, I believe, something like that. Now, who knows, perhaps this was Sodom and Gomorrah, perhaps these are the two cities that was destroyed by fire and brimstone, if you will, by volcanoes for their perverse activities. Because when we opened up Pompeii and we managed to get in there and take a look around, they actually won't display most of the artwork that was adorned around the city itself because it's all sexual in content. The people of Pompeii were quite, I don't know what the right terminology to use is, they were quite liberal, quite free and quite loose with their ideology and public facing everyday life, you know. So like I say, people like flamenco, and yeah, flamenco, there's another couple of researchers, I can't think of the top of my head, who were really studying these kind of these dates, timelines and locations in actual scientific manners rather than trying to condense everything into a pre-accepted Scalinger framework, if you get me. So yeah, that's fascinating stuff, but we're going to keep moving, let's keep going. Okay, so we found this area here that's it's got some discoloration again, you know. I don't know if Google does this on purpose to hide imagery on the shots or not, but I was looking at the shape of this, which I found very peculiar, to be honest. There's rings within rings, it's elevated, you can't really, it's on 3D but you can't really tell, but that is definitely elevation. As you can see, there's runoff here, there and everywhere. I just thought that was quite an interesting visual, to be honest. I thought I'd share it. Okay, so here's a little treat. I've been whipping around for about another 40 minutes to be honest, and I've seen a few anomalous things, but nothing really to brag about or to bother sharing. But if you look here, we see a few more of these like little circles. Honestly, don't know what they are, but we find them everywhere. But one of the things I mentioned earlier on in the video was about the Herodotus mentioning the Black Pyramids. Now, that's probably the closest that I've come to finding them. Three black objects, two closer, one slightly further apart, similar shape to the Giza pyramids. I'm not for 1 second claiming that these are pyramids, by the way, but I noticed a large build-up of sand here as well. So, because I'd mentioned about the Herodotus pyramids earlier on in the video, I just thought I'd show you these. I mean, there's not much here. It's just piles of boulders by the look of it. Yeah, there's not much there at all, is there? Been whipping around now for a couple of hours, to be honest. Getting a bit tired, staring at the screen, and my trigger finger is gone. All the scrolling in and out. But I just came back to Mauritania just to have another little look before I closed the maps down. And as you can see here, this is what seems to be some kind of island in the middle of a mountain range or an elevated area surrounding it. Like I said, I just thought it was intriguing really. There's not much really to look at. As I've said before, you know, you have to really zoom in to be able to pick up any real detail. And unfortunately the resolution just isn't that good. You look around the surrounding area for the elevation. Sometimes you see something, sometimes you don't. I'm not too sure what's going on there. It's interesting geology, to say the least. Yeah, like I say, I mean, you can spend so many hours doing this, just roaming around, looking around, where the bad guys are to be found. Just spend so much time just looking around, trying to find settlements and old ruins. And to be honest, I actually think it's been a success today. We found some stuff I didn't expect to find, let's put it that way. Yeah. So in the recap, we've had a little look around Mauritania once again. We actually managed to find a couple of settlements, technically unknown settlements, and Kizar El Barka, which was a rather large settlement, which led us on to an area that was allegedly the closest populace to Mauritania, which was Douga or something like that. I can't forgive me the name. It was just to the southwest of Mauritania, of the Eye of Sahara. Yeah, when we looked just above the Eye of Sahara, we actually found an area with unknown buildings, unknown settlements, which people referenced who'd visited the site that it looked very medieval in its construction, which is funny because I'd seen an area earlier on which I referenced reminded me of structures that we see in Wales, the likes of Yorkshire, Scotland, you know, the way the stones were stacked in the construction. And I've already mentioned in the previous video the potential Iron Age settlement, and then you factor these things into, as I've mentioned, Anatoly Fomenko, which again I will put the link in the description below. I advise anyone to listen to the audio books. It's quite thick information. It takes a while to digest, never mind to start theorising off it. You've got to try and get it inside you first and assimilate the information before you can bounce onto your own things next. But yeah, and we've discussed migrations again, and the relations between like the Guanches the Berbers, the Basque, people in Britain, southeast Britain, not as much, more northwest. And yes, the destruction, the timelines, you know, the whole thing is an absolute mess, because you've got people who are making videos on the channels here, there and everywhere, which I commend them for, don't get me wrong. I watch them, you know, give them a like, I enjoy it. But a lot of the stuff is, it's very dodgy. It's dodgy stuff, you know. People are taking a tiny snippet of information and building whole theories around it. As you can tell off my videos, obviously part 1 and this being part 2, I'm actually looking for the archaeology on the ground. You know, it's all good having the theory, but unless you've got the actual physical data to go with it, it's all conjecture. And it's all conjecture anyway. As I say, go and research flamenco. Anything beyond 1600 AD back into the past is dodgy. You know, the chronology is all over the place. Thanks for anyone who stuck around and bear with me during these videos, and who supports me on the channel. To be honest, you guys are legends, and hopefully I'm going to get better and better. There's a couple of really good videos coming down the pipeline. It took a little while to get the data together, but yeah, thanks for stopping by. Enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.